think it'd probably be honestly just the simple thing that I talked about in my workshop here at this one-day training is that just stay faithful and play the long game of youth ministry. I remember my very first youth ministry was with 12 students in a small Korean immigrant church. All my friends would say like, oh, that's so sweet. You have 12 students like Jesus and his 12 disciples. And I'd always think like, oh yeah, I guess that is, but if I have 12 students, who's my Judas? But then even it felt more like I had 11 Judases and one disciplate sometimes. And so it was just really hard to see the point of what I was doing. And I think those of us working with youth, and maybe even at a higher rate, those working in immigrant churches, we can sometimes question, is there any value in what we're doing? Often we look down upon from our peers because we're not in the varsity ministry. We can kind of look down on from those that are older in ministry because we're not working with adults. And so there's a big temptation to question our value, our worth, our calling. But I think as the same as I would encourage senior leaders, how they view youth ministers and youth pastors, or even those working with youth and even parents, but rather to see the great value and dignity they have because of how necessary and urgent the need for working with youth is today. I think it's unfortunate that churches are struggling on the whole to find youth pastors. There's a lot of reasons why that is, but I think probably the most basic fundamental one is people are graduating out of seminary less, so less people going into ministry. And the few that are, they're looking for immediately for ministry opportunities with adults. They kind of think a little bit more lowly of youth ministry. I've been working in youth ministry and with students for a combined total of about 20 years, 15 to 20 years now. And one of the reasons I'm still involved with it is because I don't see youth ministry as the lesser or JV ministry. I really think if we want to see the next generation come to faith in Christ, and we want to see any sort of revival that we talk about a lot on American soil with the decline of Christianity, we're sowing the seeds in the present for the gospel, for the future reaping of the harvest of the gospel. By sowing these seeds of the gospel right now, we may not see fruit for 10, 20, 30 years. But come in that time, 10, 20, 30 years from now, when these students are in their adulthood, as Stephen Paz says, the greatest indicator or factor for adult conversion is childhood involvement in the church, then we are giving them, even in a small part, the seed of the gospel, as John Livingston Nevius, my missionary hero, says, will not vanish even well into their adult years. And though we may not reap those rewards, though our time with the youth may be fraught with struggle and pain, we have the Genesis work, the initial tilling soil, planting seeds for future revival. And just what an amazing thought that is, to think that we may not get any of the credits, those working with youth, for future revival. The people on the front lines at the time, the Spurgeons, the Billy Grahams, so on and so forth, they get all the credits. But think about all those youth pastors that worked 10, 20 years before Spurgeon came on the scene, before Billy Graham was on the scene. Those were the ones that planted the seeds for the revival that these key figureheads got to experience. And so I think youth pastors have one of the greatest privileges, those working with youth, and I think parents raising kids and teens faithfully, to plant these seeds for future revival and growth that is not going to come by the white majority church in America. It's going to come through the minority church. And I really believe that the Asian church has so much more to offer. In fact, the Asian church is needed when it comes to this future of the church in America. And so I hope those working with youth in the immediate, as much as it's hard, would feel some hope and excitement that God has dignified and placed you in a position for this time for future reaping of the harvest that God is going to do through the power of His Spirit.